T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Welcome, everybody. You get the Horns Sports here, Tad and Jeff. First show of 2024, and we're going to start it off with a bang. So, first of all, what's happening, brother? How you doing, man?
Hey, doing great, man. I'm ready to get 2024 off to a fast and excellent start here. So,
Absolutely, and I believe we shall. Yeah, man, got a lot of good stuff to talk about. I thought, first things first, obviously we just had the holidays, we just had New Year's and, all of those types of things. But as all of that time was happening, we enjoyed a little tiny bit of time off here. Certainly sports continues. The NFL has certainly continued to take shape as we're starting to move now into the postseason and getting a better feel for how those matchups are looking and everything as well. So yeah, man, what are your thoughts? What do you think, in terms of what we saw in the NFL from this last season? This last week.
and, we're about there.
Yeah. So what were any takeaways that really jumped out to you?
Man, there was a lot of good games on this weekend. Just a lot of different times popping up here and there. I'm sure you'll cover it, but just the thorough thrashing that the Ravens put on the Dolphins. Game could have looked a lot different had Tyreek not bobbled that ball in the end zone. That was just so unlike him.
Yeah.
And then, the Cowboys and Lions, that call at the end where I guess they just confused everybody. So, I wasn't quite as hard on the refs as everyone else because I feel like that was the whole Lions idea, was just to try and fool everybody. And they eventually did. I mean, that was, send two guys over there to check in. And, so it was, that was a wild scenario that happened there.
Yeah.
And then going for two at the end, that was, I just feel like the Lions were just like, we're not going to overtime. We're already in the playoffs. We're not going to go and try to get anyone injured. So why not go for two, which I don't blame them. But good news, Brad Allen, the ref, will now be reffing the Pittsburgh-Baltimore game. So hopefully that'll go well. So, and then they get pulled from the playoffs because of that. I mean, whew. They brought it up again, and this is something that it has to just be greedy owners, because nothing else makes sense. Every other professional sport has full-time referees. I'm not saying this would necessarily have changed anything, but it's just something that every time something like this comes up, they bring it up. Like, why are these guys not full-time? Why is this not their full-time job? Why is it not something that they're studying every single week? They're doing the same thing that players do.
Yep.
I don't know. Like, NHL is probably the least profitable of all of the major sports, and they have full-time refs. I mean, I don't understand. It's not as if the refs in the NFL don't get paid well, because they do. But I boggles my mind how they're not full-time. There's things you could do. Why don't you go to practices during the week? Send a ref to each practice, fly them here and there so they can work with the teams. And doesn't even have to be the teams they're playing, but, or that they're reffing that week, but why not go to practices, set it on practice, call it like you see it in practice, so they know what to look for and what to do. And the players know what to do. You players know where to line up. They know what a false start is when they put their head down and bring it back up as the center and get called for a false start. No one can explain that to us. You see it 50 times a game, and all of a sudden one time it gets called. So I just don't understand why they don't have full-time refs. And it has to be that just the owners don't want to have to pay these guys full-time. I don't know. What else could it possibly be?
It doesn't really make it doesn't make any sense, because again, in every other sport, they are full time. So why wouldn't you make it the same? Like it's not like there isn't a precedence for it, right? Like
Right.
it's clearly set out that this is how it's done. So if in fact that's how it's done everywhere else, why not just do it that way? Why not? Why wouldn't you want to have the exact same thing? And if nothing else, it shows a commitment to getting things right, to wanting it done the right way, getting it done the right way. I, I just don't understand why that would be something that the NFL even wants to like flirt with. Like we understand that at the end of the day, calls are going to be made. Some are going to be good, some are going to be bad. There's no getting around that. But this idea that in some way, like you just it's open for the refs, or I'm sorry, the NFL to just kind of be like, we don't care. And then what ends up happening, right? You get these constant things said on a weekly basis about, whether betting lines are influencing calls and scores, and, hey, you get all these guys aren't even full time. They're trying to make money. Half these guys are attorneys and things. They're doing just fine financially, but you still leave the door open to that questioning and that criticism that just wouldn't be there otherwise. So why not solve the problem? I don't understand. It
Yeah,
just doesn't make sense.
right. They want more calls to come up from, come upstairs and be called down. And, I can't remember the game. Oh, it was the Steeler game. They kept towards the end of the game, they kept pulling the head ref to the sideline. And for the longest time, we had no idea what was going on. He would literally they run a play, stop, and then he would run back over to the sideline. And it ended up being, there was like a drone or something in the air.
Oh yes,
But
yes.
it was still so confusing at the time. Like, what is happening? No one's saying anything. They're not mentioning anything. Like, I don't want more calls coming from upstairs that they have to now stop and replay.
Right.
I just want these guys to be good at their jobs and be able to at least tell the players, this is what I'm saying. Send them to practice, make them work full time. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Make them study, make them look at film, make them watch stuff. And maybe they do, but let's do this on a full time basis. If they are attorneys and stuff, they're probably not having a lot of time during the week to be, studying film.
Yeah.
So make them full time, have them go to practices, have them set in with the teams. Again, not the teams that they're reffing that week, but have them go in, a certain day, Wednesdays, that's usually full pad and practice days. Have them go in and sit in on a practice. Have them go in and be like, hey, this would be called a false start. This would be called illegal formation. This is called whatever, hey, that's a hold. You can't do that. And that way these players know more and they're not all confused. What are you talking about? It's still going to be there, right? But at least they're full time. They know ahead of time, hey, this is what we're looking out for. This is what we're going to be calling. It just doesn't make any sense. And like I said, it just leads to controversy. And again, maybe the NFL just loves that and they want to do that, but just make them full time. I mean,
yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand why you wouldn't want to simplify it. I just, take it off the table. But look, at the end of the day, we're still getting incredible football right now.
Really
at least from certain teams and certain games and things, and things are definitely trending the way the NFL would like them to go.
Yeah.
So outside of the refs, I mean, was there anything from we talked about Lions Cowboys, which is a strange kind of series of endings in that game, because truthfully, after all of the penalties and the issues, for Dan Campbell to go for it again for the 2-point conversion after like however many tries it was, it's like, oh, it doesn't matter. We're just continuing to go for it. It's like, okay, man, 3 or 4 straight times. It probably makes sense just to go to overtime. But
I'm just guessing he didn't want. They already secured a playoff spot. They're already in the division. I don't believe they can move up or down based on whatever happens the rest of the way. And I think it was just a thing of like, hey, we're not going to go to overtime. We don't want our guys to get hurt. And I don't care that they went for it at that point, but it's I think that was more just, hey, we don't want these guys, we don't want our guys getting injured, and I can't really blame them from that. So Outside of that, I mean, the Bears now, they're back again. They're 7-9. I mean, they just out of nowhere, the Bears are now 7-9. Talks are that Eberflus is coming back. They now secure the number one spot because the Carolina Panthers are just a complete disaster at this point. You got your owner throwing drinks on opposing fans.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I hope people have seen that. I don't think, and I'm looking now, I don't believe I have that clip. But I mean, for people that like David Tepper, who is a multi-billionaire owner of an NFL team, to be in his suite, and Jags fans were just yelling stuff at him.
oh,
He literally threw a drink out onto the crowd, threw his glass down, and stormed out of his suite. Man, do you realize how much he could be sued for now?
yeah,
Like,
I mean,
throwing
someone
a
could
drink
just,
on someone is considered assault.
yeah,
And in this world we live in now with COVID and every type of infectious disease and stuff like that, oh my goodness. And a multi-billionaire, crazy wealthy guy, like, it ain't going to be cheap. It is not going to
no,
be cheap. This guy is going to be an
not at
absolute
all.
target.
It came out today. I believe he was fined $300,000 by the NFL for it. Well deserved.
Yeah.
I brought up today. I was listening to a sports talk radio show today, and it's like, first off, why is the owner? Why does he have his window open, anyways? Where
Yeah.
people have access to him. Why? You, people you never really see. I think to the Ravens owner. I don't think I've ever watched a game and seen him. Like, it's just not something that I like. He's never seen.
Yeah. He's there.
Rooney.
Like I've been at Ravens games and sat directly in front of Steve Bisciotti's suite, and he's come out and he'll actually and I'm talking after the game's over though. He'll lean over the wall and take selfies with people and stuff, like really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like outside of that, he's not making himself seen. He's not putting himself out there. He doesn't have the Jerry Jones syndrome of needing to be out in front of everybody because he can't stand the focus being on something other than
That's
him.
it. And that's, I think of Rooney in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
You're not going to find him. I mean, I'm sure he's there. You're just not going
Yeah.
he's just not going to be somewhere where the spotlight's on him. So now it's decided that Eberflus is probably coming back for the Bears. They got a big decision to make with Justin Fields, being now that they have the number one pick. I feel like Fields does this every single year where he struggles with injuries and poor play. And then the last 5-6 games of the year,
Yeah.
you see like what he can be. And it's, he just makes it impossible for them to make a decision. I assume they're probably going to lean more Harrison Jr. at this point,
Yeah.
to match up with DJ Moore, or maybe, one of the offensive tackles. But that's a good position to be in. There's a good chance that they may trade out of that. So, it's nice. They're 7-9 and they still get the number one pick. And really, they have the players that they really wanted out of that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, look what Bryce Young is doing. And he's had a few good games. He's put together a few decent games, but, they're happy with Fields, it would appear anyways. And if they're not, hey, Caleb Williams is out there, Drake May, whoever you think might be the best quarterback in the draft. So they're in a really good position. And then I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the Pittsburgh Steelers at this point. Last two games with my boy Mason putting up 34 against the Bengals, and then turn around and putting up 30 against the Seahawks.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting turn of events there. I cannot
100%.
figure out for the life of me if it's good or bad for that team.
I don't know. I mean, Mason now deserves minimally to be the number 2. And he's made some money these past 2 games. I mean, no matter what he does next week against the Ravens, he's made himself some money. So I would like to see him stick around and probably, compete, have a true competition in the off season and training camp. I like to see a true competition there. I wouldn't be opposed to giving him the reins at this point. I mean, he's proven what he can do, um, and I think he's played well. So good for him. Interesting stat, and I'm going to throw this at you. And we didn't discuss this. So Mike Tomlin has coached 256 regular season games thus far. How many games do you think he's played, or the team has played, that they have not been in playoff contention or already eliminated from playoff contention?
212 games?
256 games. How many
256 games, and of those 256 games, how many were played when they were completely eliminated from playoff contention?
Yeah.
I mean, probably 2 or 3.
One.
Okay. Yeah.
One game. That was in 2013 when they lost to the Bengals and dropped to 7-8. Turned around the next week and beat the Browns and finished 8-8 that year. So, listen, I mean, you say what you want about them. You say like how much the team has underperformed this year, and I still go back to the those 2 brutal losses that they had against the Patriots and then the Cardinals, and I mean, just either one of those 2 and they're in the playoffs. That's all they needed was one of those 2, and now they have I don't know 6, 7, 8 scenarios. We can get into that a little bit. I've got the scenarios for the playoffs this week. But I
think I saw it was like something like a 10% chance for them to get in.
It's not, and they can even lose and still make it into the playoffs, which is insane.
Some ties and stuff.
Yeah, without ties. Yeah, it's crazy that they can get in. So we can get into it a little bit, but yeah, it's crazy. So again, it's just one of those things, man. It's just I feel like this is an every year thing where they just get on this losing streak, and Kenny getting hurt and having Mitch in there just didn't do them any favors. Of course, those will be 2 straight years now that Mitch has literally thrown us out of the playoffs. So it's frustrating. I feel like if they can make the playoffs, I feel like they can probably make a little noise, so at least be competitive based on the way they've been playing recently. But it might just be a little bit too little too late. So we'll see.
I mean, and for any team, this isn't just about the Steelers, right? But isn't that the absolute worst place you could possibly be as an organization?
100%.
Like,
yes.
Who wants to be a 9-7 team who can sometimes fall backwards into the playoffs and might win a game and then lose? Like, we see it, and it's kind of like one of those things where, look, I'm all about a winning culture. Like, I don't believe in tanking seasons and, any of that kind of stuff. So I'm never going to advocate for not trying to win. It's just more that if the best you are is that, then it's almost impossible to get better from that situation, from that position.
It's tough, because I mean, if they lose, this week, they're going to be right in that 17, 18 range, for drafting, and it's tough to do. It's tough to really build. I mean, this draft they did really well. In fact, I believe all of their draft picks except for one played a huge significant role this week. Some of that was just no choice. Steelers are dealing with a ton of injuries. Middle linebacker, corner now, with Minka still being out, and safety, I guess, with Minka being out and Casey being suspended. It just, they've been dealing with a lot on the defensive side, but it's good to see. I mean, I don't know if this is something that they can roll into next year or what, but here we are. So I don't know. Yeah. 17 straight years without a losing record. So
I feel like that is it's one of those things where it's like such a, I don't know, unimportant thing that people continue to make such a big deal out of.
It is, but you ask Washington if they would love to have 17 straight winning seasons. I mean, they take it in a heartbeat. The fact that you're in playoff contention every single year I mean, I would say 50-60% of the league would probably sign up for it, to be honest. So
Yeah.
I get it. That's not Steeler football. It's not the winning culture. It's not the winning way. But I'd be remiss to not say that it's not an impressive stat. And I would be, I guess a fool to say that, I would take anything else. Like I don't want to be, a team that wins the Super Bowl and then, sucks for the next 5, 6, 7
Right.
years. I mean, maybe if I never won a Super Bowl, or never seen a Super Bowl, then, it'd be all for it. Like when LA won their Super Bowl, they pretty much went all in, screw those picks. I think that was the motto. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, although they're now in the playoffs and I said they're going to be a dangerous team.
100%.
And they certainly, I think, will give any team they play a very, very, very tough game. So,
I mean, a healthy Matt Stafford is as good as anyone.
100%.
As good as anyone in the league.
Very underrated. Very underrated. You got someone in Baltimore who is, I won't say an absolute shoo-in for MVP, but probably MVP in Lamar Jackson.
Sure.
And if you look at Matthew Stafford's numbers, they're comparable in a lot of stats. He actually beats Lamar in. So Stafford very underrated his whole entire career, to be honest. But so it's good. Good for him, man. They're going to be a tough out. So. All right. What do you got?
Yeah, I'll tell you something too that, like you mentioned guys who maybe need consideration for, like MVP that we're not hearing about. And a guy that we talked a little bit about earlier, Jordan Love. I'm going to throw this out here. And this is a stat that when I saw this, I thought pretty crazy. Jordan Love, in his first season as a starter for Green Bay, has 3,843 passing yards and 30 passing touchdowns. The Chicago Bears, in their 104-year-old history, their passing yard leader threw for 3,838 yards, so 5 yards less than Jordan Love, and 29 passing touchdowns compared to Love's 30. That's over the course of, again, a full 104 years. It has taken the Bears 104 years. They still haven't found someone who is as good as Jordan Love is in his first season as a starter.
It's insane. I don't get it. And the person that I would say you could have given me 8 guesses, and I don't think I would have guessed the person that holds that record either.
Yes.
Yeah. I honestly forgot he even played for the Bears, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, the person who holds in the 104-year history of the Chicago Bears, their passing yards leader and their passing touchdowns leader is Eric Kramer. Eric Kramer. Not a name that jumps off the page to NFL fans and historians.
I honestly don't think I don't think I would have guessed that. I think you could have given me 10 guesses and I would have never landed on Eric Kramer had I not seen that.
Most people are going to think Jim McMahon automatically, or some of these guys, I
mean, even, oh gosh, his name draws a blank. Played mid 2000s. Jay Cutler. I would have probably guessed Cutler. I mean, because he seemed to probably, I'm sure he holds the passing records there. Would have never landed on Eric Kramer, which is insane that he holds the single season record for that, and Love broke it in year 1.
Yeah.
Listen, we'd have to go back and look through our, what word?
Prognostications?
There you go. Yeah, I almost pulled a Zion there. I just stopped myself because I couldn't pull the word. I don't know how much I got right, but I did say that I feel like the Packers found their next Brett Favre and their next Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Well, it was really interesting because Dez Bryant, I don't know if you saw him, former Cowboys wide receiver Dez Bryant, retweeted a tweet that he had put out at the time that Jordan Love was going into the draft, before he got drafted, saying, whichever team drafts Jordan Love, you just got your franchise quarterback. And needless to say, he was not reposting that until now.
Yeah,
It has not
yeah.
been reposted at all for the past several years.
He
But
did post
now
that 2 years ago. No,
yeah,
of course
he's bringing
not.
it out now.
Yeah,
But
sure.
there were, let's face it. I mean, Jordan Love has done a lot of good things. He has not played great all the time, but no one can expect him to play great all the time
No.
when it's your first year as a starter. It doesn't matter how long you've been sitting on the bench. It's how long you've been in the game, and he has
Exactly
not
right.
been in a lot of games.
No, and he's his numbers are probably comparable, or even better to Aaron Rodgers' first year starting. So if he takes that next step, again, I think they're probably a receiver, tight end away from really being competitive. Probably a running back as well. So they definitely have some holes on the offense. But you give him a number one as far as a receiver, which is the whole Aaron Rodgers, I guess, debate. They never gave him a first round wide receiver. But if you can bring someone a Tyler Boyd or someone like that into the fold, man, he'll easily top those numbers next year.
Yeah, you got to think so.
Yeah, and they're in playoff contention still. I mean, they're right there. They're also close to clinching a playoff spot. So yeah, very very interesting year for sure for them. So.
Yeah, and then obviously it goes without saying, you see I'm wearing my my Ravens hoodie tonight, and I mean, there are not too many times where you can look at a more challenging 2-week span for a team to have, and also to look as good as the Ravens have looked. I mean, to go Christmas night cross country to play San Francisco, beat them, stomp them in San Francisco, then fly home on a short week and then have to play Miami. So you went cross country to play the best team in the NFC. Then you had to come back on a short week to play the second best team in the AFC in your house. And I mean, yeah, just a near historic beating that was put on the Dolphins from that game. Those 2 weeks back to back, I mean, that is a challenging run for any team. And for them to outscore those two teams by that level is just it's insane right now.
Yeah, I mean, they are just clicking absolutely on all cylinders. I mean, Lamar probably had, I mean, I don't know, statistically, maybe his best game ever. I mean, he was 18 to 21, 321, and 5 touchdowns. I mean,
no turnovers. I mean, just clean, efficient. They had a perfect passer rating. And like, this is the thing. Lamar Jackson, that was his third game in his career already with a perfect passer rating. The all-time NFL record is 4 by Ben Roethlisberger.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Brady, Peyton Manning, all of these guys with 3. The idea that Lamar Jackson already has 3 games with a perfect passer rating, keep in mind for a guy who people like to say isn't a quarterback. And then, separate from that, he will likely win his second MVP by the time he's, 27? I mean, like, it's very realistic that if this guy were able to stay healthy, that he could end up setting the records for number of MVPs and number of perfect games. It's well within his reach to do, which is crazy to think about, particularly for a guy. We all know the background and the history. People like Bill Polian and other experts saying you should play wide receiver. He's not a quarterback. Even people still like to say he's a running back. He's not a quarterback. Sorry, man. When you have perfect passer rating games, when you are single-handedly winning, when you're the MVP, and the first time he was the MVP, he had 36 passing touchdowns. People like to forget that because they think about the running. He had 36 passing touchdowns that year. So this idea that the guy can't throw, but now he's on a different level with the passing, and you're at historic highs for him for completion percentage. His quarterback rating, his efficiency is just, it's crazy. And like you said, 18 of 21 for 5 touchdowns, and 2 of those incompletions that I can specifically, think of. One of them was an early, I think it was a 42-yard bomb to Rashad Bateman. That was an absolute perfect pass that 99 times out of 100 is going to get caught. And a lot of people thought was a catch at the time during that game.
Yep.
And then another one was Isaiah Likely a little bit later, low pass as Likely was breaking out, but it was in his hands. He just didn't hold on to it. Right. So, I mean, it's not unreasonable to think that this guy could have gone 20 of 21 for 5 touchdowns. I mean, he didn't need to do any better. It was a perfect passer rating, but still crazy. And not cheating it, right? Because you need a minimum of 15 attempts. So he wasn't a situation where it was like, oh, he went 15 of 16 or, something like that. Like he threw the ball. He was going downfield. These weren't dink and dunk passes, had 321 yards. So if you're doing that on 18 completions, you're throwing the ball downfield. I mean, that's the bottom line. So I think getting harder and harder to figure out like where to criticize him, and the stress that it's putting on defenses is really starting to become evident. When you see San Francisco and Miami, both of those are very, very good defensive teams, and they just don't have an answer. It's like the first quarter, it seems like it's going their way, and then the adjustments get made, and then he takes it over. And it's crazy to see. And yeah, that Todd Monken offense has just been getting progressively better because, I was talking to our buddy T-Rock. 8 of the Ravens' last 10 games, they've scored 30 or more points. 8 of their last 10. So when you're in that situation, if you're putting up 30-some points, you should be winning those games, right? Like that's the bottom line. You should expect to be able to win games if you're consistently putting up 30-plus points. And they are. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Now, obviously, locked up the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. Will likely not really play anybody in this, this final game of the season against Pittsburgh because it doesn't affect anything for them. And then a first round bye, and then the playoffs come through Baltimore. So it'll be very interesting to see because I was there in 2019 in the same scenario playing against the Tennessee Titans. I went to the game. I was actually at the last game of the regular season that year. Same thing against Pittsburgh. Nothing to play for. RG3 played. Lamar didn't even play, and then went back again for the playoffs against Tennessee. And so, yeah, those scars are still very, very. Like I hear them talk about it for Lamar and for Coach Harbaugh. I also have scars.
You carry those with you everywhere.
Yeah,
yep.
They got paid to be there.
Sure.
I had to pay for that opportunity. So many ways I got it worse.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, yeah. So, but yeah, it's look, man, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not arrogant. I mean, I made it very clear to everyone that I was very nervous going into this Dolphins game. It's a perfect trap game.
Oh, sure.
Because you had the cross-country travel, you had the big emotional win on national television Christmas night. It just felt like such an easy game to come out and be flat for. Just didn't happen. So
no.
Yeah, it's impressive. And moving past that, I mean, look, I don't think there's too much to look ahead to of note in Week 18, but there are going to be a couple games that I think could be relevant, but less about the games in Week 18 to me than about the changes that are going to be upcoming. And we'll talk more about this over the next few weeks, but the off-season changes that we're going to be seeing in the NFL are going to be pretty significant, from coaching changes. And man, there are some rumors. Now, I'm not going to delve into all of what they are, but there are a lot of rumors right now swirling around the NFC East and not Washington, because everybody knows that there are going to be changes made in Washington. But there are some things swirling around a little further north of Washington. There are some really interesting Philadelphia Eagles rumors going around right now of some potential changes of impact. And I'm really curious to see what's going to play out. We won't put those out right now because we don't know if they're true. But it's interesting. It's interesting what's being talked about in Philadelphia.
Very, very interesting. I feel like, again, we won't get too deep into it, but I feel like the head coach there is someone you stomach when you're winning, but just can't wait to get rid of. I mean, you're
Yeah.
just looking for an opportunity, any opportunity to get rid of him. So yeah, I mean, look, they lost their, their OC, they lost their DC,
Yep.
and they bring in Matt Patricia, who's not not doing well at all. And then the offense doesn't look the same. I mean, you saw all those Jalen Hurts runs and how many of those touchdowns. So he broke the touchdown rushing record for a running back, and I want to say 90% of those were from the 1 yard line. It's just, it works, and it's hard to argue it, but it's maybe a little bit of a skewed stat there.
Well, you're right, because here's the thing. So I have, so Jalen Hurts broke the NFL record for the most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in a season with 15. To give you an idea of those touchdowns by distance, 11 of those 15 were from 1 yard away. 2 of them were from 3 yards away, 1 from 10 and 1 from 12. So 11 touchdowns from Jalen Hurts were from a yard out. So again, these are goal line runs, and if you can't score those with your running back, like, I just don't understand. Look, I don't care, right? Do whatever play you want to run, but it seems strange to me that you have to be that reliant. I understand it on a 4th down or something like that, but on the goal line, how are you being built that you have to do quarterback sneaks on the goal line all the time? That just seems strange to me. And I have to think it probably seems strange to the running backs that are on the roster who never, ever get a chance to score on the goal line. Like, what running back is going to want to go to Philadelphia?
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. Why would you want to go there in the offseason? Who's signing in Philly?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, it works, so it's hard to be, you're like, oh, this is terrible. This is awful. Yeah. I mean, I guess if they know it's a guaranteed touchdown, which, I mean, it is. I mean, let's be honest. It's just weird that how many times they get to the 1 yard line.
Right. Why are you always on the 1?
Weird. Maybe because the running back can't put it in. Maybe that's it. I don't know. They're only good from inside, inside the 2 to the 98 yard line to the 2 yard lines. They're not good anywhere else. So.
Yeah. It's really a strange thing. And so there's that. And then, one thing while we're throwing out some stats, I just wanted to make sure I touched on this because it is a great story. The list of quarterbacks with 10 or more playoff wins and 25 or more playoff passing touchdowns. Most of these names you're going to know, right? I mean, it's Tom Brady, it's Peyton Manning, it's Joe Montana, it's Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger, Patrick Mahomes, Terry Bradshaw, John Elway, and one other name that I know you know because I sent it to you, but a lot of people would not think of this name right away. One, Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is on that list. The only other quarterback on the list that I just read of quarterbacks with 10 or more playoff wins and 25 or more playoff passing touchdowns. That is an incredible, first of all, just to have 10 or more playoff wins and 25 or more playoff touchdowns is incredible postseason play. That's why it's only the very best of the best. Hall of Fame. Every single player that I named is a Hall of Famer. Brady, Manning, Montana, Favre, Rodgers, Roethlisberger, Mahomes, Terry Bradshaw, John Elway. Everyone an obvious, absolute Hall of Famer. And then Joe Flacco. So is Joe Flacco a Hall of Famer?
Man.
I mean, look, I hadn't planned on having this debate tonight, and it might be a really good debate for us to have sometime on this show.
Yeah.
Like, is Joe Flacco a Hall of Fame quarterback?
Man, I would say the eye test would tell me no. But man, what if? Because this Browns team is certainly good enough, and I think they'll brown their way out of the playoffs like normally they would normally do. But if somehow he gets them to the Super Bowl and they win the Super Bowl, he has to at that point be in the discussion anyways. Right now, based on eye test, I mean, I think no. I would say no, but I mean it's impressive. Now let's be honest here. I mean, he had 25 touchdowns. The one year that the Ravens went to the Super Bowl with him, I believe, and correct me because you would know it better than I would. He had 9 touchdowns in that one postseason.
He had, I think, 11 in a single postseason
Yeah.
at one
So
point.
11 touchdowns, like no picks or something crazy like that. So, I mean, one postseason, he has 11 touchdowns. So it's still impressive, man. I don't know. I don't know what to think of him. I really don't. I mean, I think it's just the way, his career kind of tailed off, especially when Lamar came in. And then he's just been kind of a cast off ever since. Never really has taken the reins that I'm aware of. I don't think he went anywhere else to be a starting quarterback. He's gotten into a lot of games, but never was really a factor much outside of these last, 4 games that he's played with the Browns. And let's be honest, he's put up he's put up really good numbers, but he's also thrown a ton of interceptions, which you're not going to get away with in the playoffs. I mean, I believe in those 4 games, he's got 8 picks. So he's probably top 10 right now in the NFL in interceptions. So, I mean, I know everyone wants to, hip hip hooray because it's a great story, and it is. So I don't want to I don't want to diminish it, but he's still throwing a lot of interceptions, and that's just not something come playoff time you want from your quarterback.
So let me throw this out here to you. I'm going to compare two players for you briefly. Okay. 2 players. One of these players is a Hall of Famer, and one of these players is Joe Flacco. Okay. Joe Flacco has a 61.6% completion percentage. He's thrown for almost exactly 44,000 yards in his career. He's thrown 245 touchdowns, 155 interceptions, quarterback rating of 84.2. In comparison to his 61.6 completion percentage, this other quarterback has a 56.9% completion percentage. He's thrown for 51,000, we'll call it 51,500 yards to Flacco's 44,000. He threw for 300 touchdowns to Flacco's 245 and 226 interceptions to Flacco's 155, and a quarterback rating of 79.9 compared to Flacco's 84.2. That person is John Elway. So John Elway, who clearly played way longer as a starter than Joe Flacco, has a lower completion percentage than Joe Flacco, has a lower quarterback rating than Joe Flacco, has thrown more interceptions than Joe Flacco, and of course has more touchdowns than Joe Flacco does. So there is that. He does have more touchdowns. But when you look at that across the board, it starts to get pretty crazy to think that Flacco is somewhat in that conversation as a potential Hall of Fame player. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying he's got to be talked about.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, what's your gut? I mean, he played for you all for ever and a day. What's your gut feeling right now? Eye test.
It so happens I agree. Like, I don't think of Flacco as a Hall of Fame quarterback. Like, I just don't, right? But I do think he's one of those guys that, over time, what do you do with that? I mean, his average yards per pass is 6.8. John Elway's 7.1. I mean, like, he's neck and neck. And I haven't gone back and compared him with lots and lots of other, quarterbacks to really see this. So we would do a deeper dive. But it's an interesting conversation as it pertains to Flacco, because he's one of those guys where it's like, he plays and he plays and he plays and he plays and he plays. And then you look up and it's like, dang, this dude has amassed a tremendous resume of statistical achievement when you look at the years that he's actually been a starter. If he had continued to be a starter for these last 5 years, his stats would blow Elway out of the water.
They would. I think we
Stats aren't the whole
have to,
story.
tread a little lightly on those stats because it definitely was a different time.
Yes.
In a different, you're also looking at John O was a 2-time Super Bowl champion, a Super Bowl MVP, went to Super Bowl 3 times, NFL MVP. I mean, so when you
Yeah.
start throwing all that stuff out, he was a 90s all-decade team. I
Right.
mean, Flacco was never sniffing any all-decade teams.
No.
In the in the mid 2000s or early 2000s, he wasn't sniffing that. So
Yeah.
I think just eye test wise, no. Now if he goes on and takes them to the Super Bowl and wins the Super Bowl and possibly is Super Bowl MVP, I think that's a very that's a lot. So if he does all that, then yeah, I think we would have that discussion because I mean, there's not too many. Well, I believe one quarterback has won 2 Super Bowls and not made it to the Hall of Fame. I mean,
Right.
so that's a very small list. So if he gets there and he plays well, but just based, would you have said that he was if Joe Flacco never played another down in the NFL, I don't even think it's up for debate or discussion that he's not a Hall of Famer. So
No, I agree. I agree 100%. I do think
But-
the stats are always an interesting thing to look
they
at.
are very interesting. And again, if he goes on and plays out of his mind this postseason and comes back next year, I mean, you're not going to play for the Browns next year. They're tied up, unless they can figure a way to get out of that contract with Deshaun.
$64 million next year.
Just
for the
dumb.
next 3 years. $64 million a year for the next 3 years for Deshaun Watson. That's the situation the Browns are in now.
Clearly proved they don't need him. And honestly, they haven't been that good. They're better without him.
Yep.
They've had 4 starting quarterbacks this year, and they're in the playoffs. I mean, that's insane. I mean, that probably for me, that probably wraps up Stefanski's Coach of the Year. I don't know how you don't give it to anyone else based on that alone. Just 4 different starting quarterbacks, with one being a rookie.
Yeah,
and you are, what are they now? 11-5, I believe. If I'm not mistaken. I believe they're 11-5. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're 11-5. And
they are 11-5. Yeah.
Yeah. And firmly in the grass of the playoffs, and probably going to be favored in their first matchup. Come playoff time. So, yeah, I think it really will depend how far he takes them, and someone's going to see this and be like, yeah, I mean, I think Flacco is probably the type of player we need, and we'll sign him next year. I mean, he wanted to still play. He's 38, 39,
I think something like that. Yeah,
something like that. So, I mean, he still wanted to play. I mean, he was looking around, teams just weren't calling. So, it took so many injuries and everything else just to kind of fall into place for him to get a call up. And hey, he's making the most of it. So good for him. But
yeah, that's the thing is that, so, it's a great story, but he's actually playing incredibly well. And that's where it changes, because this idea, and I'm not going to belabor this point for too long because A, we don't have time, and B, it's going to piss me off. But the idea that Joe Flacco is not comeback player of the year because DeMar Hamlin died, I don't understand. Like, DeMar Hamlin has not played. He's played very, very little, and he hasn't played well. He has not contributed to that team in any meaningful way. So he's the comeback player. Like, if that's the case, then just everyone who survives a heart attack is like the comeback, whatever they are, of the year. And I just don't understand. Like, if somebody like Joe Flacco, he didn't die, but he was out of the league. He's sitting on his couch. He gets a call. He walks in. He plays incredibly well, not just pretty good. Like, if Flacco were to do this for a whole season, okay, I'm not going to say that he'd be the MVP, but I got to think he'd be top 10, maybe even top 5 to 7 if these stats were over an entire season. And he took over a team, turned them around. They're winning games. Everyone's bought in. That's way more impressive because that's football related. This idea, like the comeback player has to actually be able to play and play well. The idea that you were able to tie your shoes and you came out on the field a couple of times, and DeMar Hamlin's a great story from last year. The idea that anything's going on this year, I don't understand that. I don't understand it from a football perspective. I don't understand it from just a common sense perspective. It does not make sense to me. Flacco is clearly the comeback player of the year. And
So-
DeMar Hamlin will clearly be voted comeback player of the year because it's a better story for the NFL.
Honestly, I wouldn't even vote Joe Flacco comeback player of the year.
Okay.
He's played 4 games.
Yeah.
So you come in 4 games and somehow you're now comeback player of the year. Comeback, comeback means you've come back to play, right? I
Right.
mean, like you've
So
either
who is it for you?
overcome. For me, Tua. Tua would be my comeback player of the year.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, how would you like this dude probably, this dude was close to like having to retire if he took another shot.
Right.
The concussions that he had in those back-to-back games were some of the scariest things we've seen on the field. And I watched Ryan Shazier get paralyzed on the field.
Right.
Those hits that he took were some of the scariest things I think I've ever witnessed in NFL. I mean, and the fact that like they let him again, we're rehashing old stuff, but the fact that they let him come back the next week after taking that hit the week before and being like, I don't think it was a concussion. Like the dude didn't know where he was.
He was laughing at movies on the plane. He's good.
Yeah,
like
he's good. Yeah. I mean, the screen was blank. I thought that was weird, but
he's got a strange sense of humor. He's unpredictable.
But that would be someone that's come back and played the course of the year. I'm not saying they have to play all 17 games, but we're automatically giving it to Hamlin. And again, great story. I mean, he just sucks at football. I mean, clearly, if he was good, they would be playing him. He's not. Yes. And it could be, the fact that they're just scared to death that, he's going to go back out there and do something else, which I really can't blame them for wanting to do that. But he's gotten into games. I believe he has 2 total tackles this year, and you're going to give him the comeback player of the year, or you want to turn around and give it to Joe Flacco, who will have played 5 games, 6 games, let's call it. It seems silly to me. I don't know. I would really give it to someone who like came back from adversity or came back. And I'm not, Hamlin did clearly. He died on the field. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I'm not going to be too upset. I could care less. Like I couldn't tell you last year's comeback player of the year. I have no idea. No idea. But if you're really going to vote for that and you're really going to make it a thing, like, they should be playing football minimally 60% of the games. Like, right. I don't know. I mean, so my vote would go to Tua based on everything we saw last year from him, how he took the team and had them on fire and then just takes those just ridiculous shots, not even thinking like, hey, this kid's going to play again. Is he, is he not? And then what he did in the offseason to prepare his body, put on the weight, do all these things to protect himself, how he went out there and learned how to slide and not take the hits and everything you need to do. So he could come back and play football at a high level. And he is, again, way too many turnovers. But he probably has a few less than Joe Flacco at this point. And Joe Flacco's played, I don't know, I say 4 games. It feels like 4 games. Maybe it's 5 games. But, he's probably thrown, 4 or 5 more picks than Flacco has all year.
Yeah, I can tell you that. So Flacco has thrown 8 interceptions for this season, and I will bring it up right now for Tua. Tua has thrown.
He had
12.
2 this week, so okay,
12. Yeah,
and Flacco's played. Let's call it 5 games. We'll be generous. I'm pretty sure it's 4, but it might be 5. So. He's thrown 4 more picks and 12 less games or 12 more games. So, I mean,
right.
Yeah. No, I mean.
Yeah, Flacco's played 5 games.
5 games.
In 5 games, he's thrown 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, over 1,600 yards, and a quarterback rating of 90.2.
Which is par for the course for Flacco. I mean, it really is. Those are his numbers. Yeah. I mean, he's less than 2 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio. So, no, he's not a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's throwing for over 300 yards a game right now. And and 300 yards and we'll call it 2.5 touchdowns, something like that per game. So, but seemingly getting kind of progressively better since he's come in, because really his first game he threw for 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. And then since then, it was 311 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 374 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, then 368 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 309 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. So the quarterback rating has been getting progressively better. The touchdowns have stayed high. The interceptions, he had one where he threw 3, which obviously was not.
But he's
not
throwing
good
one
when
at
you're
every
out of
game.
5.
So yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That's not going to win in the playoffs.
Right.
You do not want your quarterback throwing even 2-1 touchdown interceptions in the playoffs. I mean, this is like, you can't mess anything up. Playoff time is just different. So, and he knows that obviously, but there is no room for error. Yeah.
The difference is that he doesn't ever make those mistakes in the playoffs. So
I mean, that's where maybe that'll,
that is also his history. His background is that he's one of the best postseason quarterbacks ever. So it's kind of like, that was always when he was with the Ravens. It was just like, hey man, it doesn't matter. Like, just get into the playoffs and everything's fine. Like, just doesn't matter how much he sucks during the season. Doesn't matter what's going on. Just get to the playoffs and he'll take it from there.
He's fourth quarter Tim Tebow.
That's right. So listen, I know we're running long. I wanted to get through a few more things here before we start to wrap things up. One of them, we're talking, again, about some of these postseason awards that are going to be coming up and that type of thing. I saw these stats and I just wanted to remind people, because I think sometimes people, time goes by. People have a tendency to forget about things. In 2014, J.J. Watt scored 5 touchdowns, recorded 20.5 sacks, and 29 tackles for a loss, and won Defensive Player of the Year. How could you have 20.5 sacks and 5 touchdowns in the same season?
They were literally lining him up as a tight end or an extra blocker. He would always go eligible, and somehow finding him in the end zone. It was just unbelievable. Like, just what a year. Yeah.
Absolutely incredible to think that guy was out there making these catches. And like, you talk about like, oh, he was always wide open, and why didn't anyone defend against him? Like, you're not lying, because this is what was happening. And let's have a look. Let's see. Where's J.J. Watt? Oh, there he is. Nobody's within 10 yards of him. Oh, no, interception. I'm just going to take that one back myself. Just craziness.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we could go on with more clips, but the idea that guy, like, there are now, of course, TJ Watt in the league and Myles Garrett and all of these guys. But man, 29 tackles for a loss means you are camped out in the backfield.
Oh, he was just blowing everyone. Like, there was no guard, no tackle that could handle him. I mean, he was just so big, so fast.
He's doubled on every play, and it didn't matter. Every play. You knew you only had to stop him, and they couldn't stop him.
I just, one of those things you just wish, like, injuries hadn't just taken a hold of him and what he could have been if he just stayed healthy. But I just don't feel like, I feel like TJ is going to break down the same way. And you've already started seeing it a little bit, like last year, torn pec. And, you just kind of go through those little things. This year was the knee. And, when you play that hard, that fast all the time, it just, your career is just, it's not going to be long. It's going to be impactful. It's going to be rememberable, but you're just not going to have a 12, 13-year career doing that. Yeah. So,
no, agreed. And then let's see what else. I had a couple more things here I want to try to get through quickly. We talked on this show, and in fact, honestly, I think we were one of the very first to talk about the gentleman who had the Brock Purdy MVP bet. $2,000 bet was going to pay out $200,000 if Brock Purdy won MVP. And then what ended up happening was, and there's a couple of things, because again, we were off for Christmas and New Year's. Somebody bought it. So he sold that ticket. So this guy that had made this $2,000 bet sold it for $125,000. And what happened right after that? The Niners played the Ravens on Christmas night, and Brock Purdy threw 5 interceptions. Was it 5 interceptions? I think it was
4
5.
minimally, yeah.
Yeah, 4 minimally.
Yeah.
Maybe it was 5 turnovers. But yes, and single-handedly, the Ravens dismantled Brock Purdy's otherwise pretty strong MVP candidacy. And somebody spent $125,000
I mean,
on what seemed like a very good bet.
3 days before this game.
Yes.
I mean,
it was basically like, okay, he's got one more game he just has to play well in, and he's probably going to lock this thing up.
I mean, yeah, they all. So, you say like, oh, that's a really stupid. Why would you ever do that? I mean, but if you look at like what the odds were when he bought that ticket, he was actually getting better odds by buying that ticket than putting, the $125,000 on Purdy. So he was actually getting better odds. So, I mean, it made sense if you really believed it. And
yeah.
Oh man. And I don't know. I don't know that they're like Purdy played well last week. I just don't, I don't know. I mean, unless Lamar plays on Sunday, which we presume he probably isn't, or if he is, he's going to play very sparingly. Yeah. Unless he goes out and throws 6 interceptions, right. I don't know that there's any way, that he even gets it. I wasn't even 100% convinced he was the MVP of his own team at that point.
Right.
When I bought, but I get it. I just, that's gotta, could you imagine holding that ticket and seeing that Sunday night game? Like I imagine the guy probably just ripped it up, because at that point he had to know, like, I just wasted $125,000.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was so sure, I was like, this was a safe bet, man. Like, this is all he has to do. He's already shown it for the whole season. He's played 15 great games. Or sorry, 14 at that time? Yeah. 14 great games. All he has to do is just get through a couple little games. No, sir. No. It was a complete epic meltdown to the point that he got pulled from the game by the end of it to put Sam Darnold in. And so it's just, as bad as it can get. So now so it was like a story that somebody was trying to sell the ticket. Then it was a story that they had sold it for $125,000. And then it's like, hey, let's see what happens now. And then the story is that it all falls apart. So it sucks to be the guy who spent $125,000, but it's pretty sweet to be the guy that sold it for $125,000, because now it looks like it would have been worth nothing. You put $2,000 in, you got $125,000 out. That's pretty darn good.
Honestly, and I don't even think I would be upset if Purdy put up 5 touchdowns against the Ravens that game, because you're like, dude, who cares, man? Like, I won $125,000.
Yeah, I'm fine.
And here's the other interesting thing too, and I'm sure the government's going to figure it out somehow, but you just sold a ticket. Like, do you pay taxes?
It's almost like winning a raffle. It's almost like winning a raffle, right? Like,
right?
How does that work? But
you're not filling out any claims form. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the Pick Swap, or I believe the website, whatever it was. Yeah, maybe they made them sign some paperwork. I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's still capital gains, right? Like, you still came into money. So I'm pretty confident that they're still going to get you on the capital gains tax on that, because it's still getting transferred to you. Now, if the guy or I guess Pro Swap, if they were to come in with just a duffel bag full of cash, maybe. But outside of that, they're going to give you a check. It has to be deposited. So, and they're going to give you also I guess it's an I-9, I think it is, for taxes, because anything over $600 has to be registered. So I don't think you could avoid it, unfortunately. Yeah,
we'll see.
Get paid in Bitcoin.
There you go.
Okay, so let's keep rolling along here, because we still got plenty. So also some news that happened was that the Detroit Pistons in the NBA had gone through an absolutely incredibly long, unbelievable, historic losing streak. The stat I'm about to tell you is actually not at the very end. What did they win? 31 or sorry, lose 31 straight games, 30 straight. It was something like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah.
This was at the point that they had lost 27 games in a row. At 27 games in a row, that was the longest single season losing streak in NBA history, losing 27 straight games. If you started with $100 and you bet on every Detroit opponent's money line and rolled it over each time, rolled the winnings over, you'd be up over $475,000 during that streak. And that's just during the 27, not the games that came after that.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. So I want to say they lost 28 straight because I believe they won their 29th game, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I believe so because the 28th game, some people on X got me all hyped up and told me all the money for all the sports books was going on Detroit to beat the Boston Celtics. And I bought in, and they were up at one point by, I want to say 17, 18 Detroit was. And that old cash out button came popping up. And I said, you know what? Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
No one's cheaper. If someone offered you 68 cents, you would take it. It doesn't matter. No one is cheaper. If you can take a win, you will instantly take any offer. It wouldn't matter what the score is. It wouldn't matter how sure your win was.
So I want to say, don't quote me on this, but I want to say, what I had bet, if they had won, I think I would have won like $50. And at the time, I think it came up like $23 or $24. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to take it. And sure enough, what happened? That game went to overtime and Detroit lost that game. So I was never so happy for a loss.
Well, you're right. So they did. It was a 28 game losing streak, and then they finally beat the Raptors, the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah.
And so, you think of that now. Again, that stat that I just gave was 27 games, and that would have won you $475,000. So if you just keep rolling your winnings over at one more game, I mean, I don't even know what that would have turned into. Probably $1 million or something.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
you've been pretty darn.
Although
good.
they were heavily the odds, because of all the bets coming in on them, obviously moved the money line, and the odds weren't like amazing for them to lose that game. So yeah,
it's crazy. Well, and here's another one. So I saw this, and we talk a lot of times on the show about just crazy parlays, crazy bets that people make, right? And this one's such a good one. This guy had a 14 pick parlay for a $5 bet, 14 picks to score touchdowns, and this is going to pay him out $489,383 in the event that Christian McCaffrey can score a touchdown on Christmas night again against the Ravens. And this is actual video of him watching the game with friends. That is the look of a man who just won $489,000 on a $5 bet. There you go.
Imagine that. And here's the thing too on this, and we talked with a bettor once who was betting all of the I don't know, it was like conference basketball finals or
conference
something.
Championships, I believe. Yeah.
There was not a cash out option on that one. I read a little bit more into it, and he did not have an option to cash out. Even when it got to the last game, they were like, no, they're not offering any type of cash out. So I guess they were like, all right, you're going to win this or you're not going to win this.
And that's through DraftKings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
There
crazy to
was
think the DraftKings is
not,
not going to want to offer that. On $500,000, it's a
yeah, with
$489,000 win on a $5 bet. Like,
yeah, and especially when it got down to Christian McCaffrey, where it's almost that was
right.
probably his lowest like odds to
Yep.
hit.
Yeah.
And I don't know, has scored 17 touchdowns this year, or like scored I think every touchdown in every single game, but maybe one or two
Yeah.
this year. So like those were the best odds for him to actually hit, and they did not offer a cash out option, so he had to just let that thing ride.
Can you imagine?
Oh my gosh, no.
Yeah.
I don't. I probably couldn't even watch the guy. I think I probably would have just taken sleeping pills and went to bed because I just don't think I could have stood to watch
Yeah.
that. Like I don't know how you would handle that.
No, the stress has to be insane. Insane. And I mean, you're just sitting there waiting to find out, hey, did my $5 just turn into 489,000 or is that a firm no? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, what are we doing here? What are we doing? I also saw the government did get their hands in that prize already as well. So there was already, he showed a screenshot of the withholdings that the state and the government actually took.
Yeah.
So I want to say he ended up with I don't know, maybe 300 of that, something like that. He ended up, but I mean, still on
Still
that
not
type
bad
of
on a $5 bet. That's a pretty sweet
Right.
return on investment.
Yeah, not bad at all. You willfully pay those taxes, no problem.
That's right. And another stat, we've talked about this before. I'm just going to throw a couple random things out. This is from the world of baseball. If I were to ask you which player has more gold gloves, the most gold glove awards in history, lots of different ones would come to mind, right? A lot of great fielding players. Cal Ripken Jr., Derek Jeter, Alex Rodriguez, Barry Bonds. There's so many different great players. The person with more gold gloves than any player at any position in baseball history is none other than Greg Maddux. And I believe that number was 18 gold gloves for Greg Maddux. I mean, we've talked about some of the Greg Maddux stats and how insane he was.
Yeah, I feel like we're a Greg Maddux Stan account here.
Yeah,
so I mean,
we need to get him on the show sometime.
You really
because
do.
We have
talk
talked
about you a lot.
Yeah. Yes. It's an unbalanced amount that we talk about him. It is unbelievable, though, that guy won that many gold gloves, and to be the most gold gloves for any player at any position. So that's not just the most gold gloves ever won by a pitcher. It's any player at any position in baseball. No one won more gold gloves at their position than Greg Maddux.
I would love, there's probably a stat out there, but I would love to see like runs saved based on his fielding.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's out there. It's got to be.
Yeah, I mean, how many of those like back up the middle did he snag? Which would be surefire. Minimally singles. Runner on third, and he just swallowed it up. I mean, gosh, he was so great. I think he's just so underrated as a player. I as far as pitcher, he's got to be in the top 20 of all time. I can't imagine he wouldn't be.
No, he's got to be. Got to be.
And that's a guy that never hit 90 on his fastball.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, it's just insane. But it was just his location, and he could just hit any spot you set up. He's going to hit it, and it was just, just amazing. And then the fielding on top of it. I mean, we're definite base hits. I mean, he just somehow finds a way. Like I don't even know. Like how often do pitchers practice that stuff? Like I imagine they probably practice more of like covering themselves, protecting themselves.
Right. That's what I'd be doing.
Yeah, 100%. I'd want to throw behind the net.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be like, I'm not playing this. I'm not doing this position. Yeah.
Man, I pitched in slow pitch softball, and I swear, man, those balls would come. If you threw it low, it's coming right back to you. Like it's just and you didn't try to, obviously, but there were times you would release the ball just wrong. Yep. And man, dude, I want nothing to do with that. And that's a softball. Like I can't, and it's coming at me 50 miles an hour, where baseball leaving the bat at over 100, no way. No, thank you.
The velocity of these hits. I mean, you're throwing this to Barry Bonds, who's rifling this thing at you like it's shot out of a cannon.
Yeah,
and you have a millisecond to be able to react to it, and he's doing it not only effectively, but at a Gold Glove level, pretty much every single season that he played. Like,
my eyes
just
would probably go cross-eyed and just stay there trying to like focus. And by that point, the ball's right in between my eyes. So
yeah, exactly. So I'm just gonna again rapid fire here. I saw this the other day. This is one of the weirdest but also coolest things. If you're a soccer fan, this fan in Brazil wore an outfit to a game that is completely made out of mirrors. This is him walking around. Now, I want to mute this. That doesn't look like it could possibly be real.
no.
But yet you see people coming up to take pictures with him and stuff.
How much time and effort did that take?
How insane looking is this?
Why?
Probably just for this reaction.
I guess, but there's like 4 people there.
Yeah. I mean, it's just completely incredible. It's like he's like a pixelated video game character.
How many houses did he set on fire from the sun beating off of his mirrors as he's
only
walking?
Go out on a cloudy day.
Jeez.
Yeah. Completely unbelievable.
How much time and effort would that have taken? Like that's not like
Tremendous.
a day planning. Like that has to be like months and months in the making.
I don't even know how you get those mirrors to stick to you. So, I mean, like, it's like the logistics on this are going to be tremendous.
I just, the things people put their effort into is crazy to me. But hey, good for him. I mean, he's a viral sensation, I suppose.
That's right. And then, well, look, hey, Christmas just passed, right? We all got different Christmas gifts, buying gifts for family members and friends, receiving gifts. This guy just got his new indoor golf set up. He's got his new net set up here. He's going to work on his game a little bit. Yeah, he's pumped, man. This is going to be the thing that takes my game to the next level. Okay?
Absolutely.
Here we go. Let's tee it up and right into this brand new net. No, directly into the ceiling.
What a moron. First off,
so pissed off too. I'm gonna hope that in fact I'm gonna mute this as it replays because I don't know if we might get banned for some of the language that comes out of him when he says this.
I mean, first off, I don't know how many people out there know anything about golf, but that is a hybrid that he has in his hand. The idea of a hybrid is you can't hit your irons, you can't get loft on your irons. So you go to a hybrid. It's meant to be lofty. It's meant to get the ball up in the air. And he has it teed, 2 inches off the ground on top of that. What an idiot.
Straight up in the air.
What an idiot. Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, thought that was pretty good for anyone who's enjoying their Christmas gifts. That is the very first swing.
With very first swing, he's excited. So much he had to take a video of it.
Yeah, exactly. Got to set this up, man. I got to show it off to the friends. This is going to be a good one.
And it's literally just a net. It's not like it's a simulator. It's
right.
So what if he hit it into it? Like, what are people going to be like? Cool.
Yeah, it's like, whoa.
Well, that's neat. Yeah, that's cool.
Sweet shot, bro. Yeah.
You might want to tee your hybrid down a little bit. Oh, wait.
And so then the last thing I have here, because we're way over time, but we're giving people a supersized kickoff here to 2024. This is longer than we should be going. So I'm just going to cut out some of these other stories and save them. But I thought this was good, man. Hopefully all of us have this type of luck starting off into 2024. This reporter standing here, and I will actually let you hear the audio. He's doing a little shot talking about something that happens at a local high school, and let's just hear what he has to say.
What was supposed to be a prank on a teacher instead backfired on the students. A blindfolded half-court shot that is now the talk of campus and beyond.
Put that in the story too.
Are you kidding me?
I went in, you know.
Did you see it?
Yeah,
Is that on tape?
yeah.
That was perfect.
You are kidding me.
If I go like this, I can get the goal in the background. I went in. I'm gonna. This is
Did
good.
that really go in?
Yeah, I went in. It's starting to freak me out.
What was supposed to...
Pretty good.
So
Pretty
it seems like
good.
it's really not that big of a deal then.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like,
Whatever.
this isn't newsworthy at all.
Cut the story. Wait, but I made it.
This one's not going to win us any Emmys. Get rid of it.
And you're fired. What?
Yeah, so I saw that and I thought, you know what, we should all be so fortunate to start off the new year with that kind of luck on our side and positive momentum. So I think that'll be a good way for us to end the show. So anything that you want to say, any way you want to close out before we wrap this sucker up and thank our
excited
audience.
Yeah, excited for the new year, excited for all the things we got coming along. So a lot of good fun stuff. I think people are going to really like it. So yeah, ready to get started, ready to kick off 2024 here. So
absolutely, we got a lot coming down the pike. We're working on a lot of things. We're super excited, and so to all of you listening, however you found us, we appreciate you listening and checking us out. And we're going to continue to do our best to keep you entertained. So thank you for being patient with us. Thank you for listening to us, and check us out on all the social media channels and all the other things and podcasts and everywhere else. There's content happening all the time. So yeah, we'll do our best to keep you entertained. Welcome to the new year. Welcome to 2024. Thank you for checking out You Get the Horns, and we will talk soon. Thank you, everybody.
good night.